Serious, when did a gut feeling save your life? Was heading to my car in my building's parking garage. On my way to work. A van was parked next to my car and I could see a man inside. He motioned for me to come around to his door, pointing to something in his car to try to get me to come look. I had a bad feeling, so I just shook my head and got in my car. I look over and he's getting out of the van. I quickly start driving off and notice there's a second man crouched behind a dumpster that was near the van. Not sure what I avoided, but sure as speep glad I did. As a teenager in Ireland. One day I got this overwhelming feeling to stay at home from school. Good thing I did, 'cause my friends called me later that night to say a girl who was bullying me brought her junkie friend onto the school campus. Hid in the toilets for most of the day, waiting to beat the speep out of me. My friends weirdly overheard the plan while they were using the toilets at morning break. This was the time before mobile phones were used. So they each called me later that night. Undefined. I don't remember this, but is a story my father told me. I was an extremely social kid up until age 5 or 6. Never met a stranger and loved people. My favorite thing to do was go to the mall to say hi to literally everyone. When I was around 4 years old, we lived next to a retired couple. Their 30-something-year-old son came to live them and they wanted to introduce him to us. I was in the driveway with my parents when they took the opportunity to come do the introduction. According to my dad, I yelped at the sight of their son and hid behind my dad. Since this was so unusual, he let me hide and just said I was shy with strangers. They didn't come back over and my parents stopped talking to them. A few months later, the neighbor's son was arrested with terabytes of child porn. He had just gotten out of jail after being convicted of child molestation. No telling what could have happened had my parents continued their friendship with our neighbors. Not driving off immediately as the light turned green. Sure enough, a second later 2 cars smashed into each other, probably right where I would have been had I taken off when the light turned green. Scary seeing a head-on collision happen literally less than 10 feet in front of you. This is why it's important to check your intersection to make sure cars are slowing and stopping before you go. It takes a moment longer and it'll save your life. Defensive driving 101. Possibly. When I was in college, my boyfriend and I lived in an apartment. One day, when I was home alone, 2 guys knock on my door. I open up and they give me some story about donating to a charity. I was dumb and said, okay, sure, let me get my purse. When I turn around, they are inside the foyer blocking the front door. I instantly get nervous and start fumbling with my, which they say they don't take checks. Just cash. Then they ask if anyone else is there and I say yes, my boyfriend is sleeping. I like to think I said that convincingly enough and I said, let me go see if he has cash. I went into my bedroom to see if I had a weapon, JIC. But I heard the door close and they were gone. Thank you to everyone for the awards, comments and votes. There's so much to this story that I didn't get into, but if you have any questions, please ask. I'm a social butterfly and an open book. Went on a date with someone from Tinder. The whole time he's talking about himself. It's nothing but the worst of the worst stories. About him being abusive to his multiple exes but blaming them. Telling me how his daughter hates him. And other horrible stuff that I can't even bring myself to say. While he's talking, I'm pretty much having a panic attack. The voice in my head is saying calming GTFO. So I say I have to go to family dinner. He's making every excuse to keep me and for me to go home with him, so I just get in my car and go. We're at a Starbucks outside. He follows me. So I call my mom. She tells me to go over and that she's calling the cops. Luckily she lives in a gated community where a guard is at the booth, so he can't follow me in. He turns around and speeds off. The cops get there, I give them all the information I have on this guy. He went into details about his life and I told the cops everything. Turns out this guy kidnapped and brutally raped a girl and was on the run and was stupid enough to tell me his real name when we met in person. It was a long summer of multiple court dates just to end in him getting a bull's peep sentence. My buddy's sister moved away from home. And within the first week of her living in her own home, a man comes up to her door and asks her if he can use her phone in her house because he is lost. She didn't buy it, felt uncomfortable and said no. Few hours pass. She walks outside to multiple police cars, ambulances and fire trucks. Turns out the guy went next door and murdered her two neighbors who let him in. Not sure if it saved my life. But I was driving once and had a gut feeling this guy pulling out of his driveway up ahead was just gonna go right ahead without looking to see if anyone was coming. I put my foot over my brake pedal and my hand on my handbrake just in case. Glad I did. I was in a compact too. Guy was in a truck. I would have been completely wrecked. My husband had a random back spasm that was unlike anything he ever felt. Said it wasn't too painful but it was out of the ordinary and it felt off. Went in and discovered it was kidney cancer. Freaking healthy. Buff-ass 32-year-old with kidney cancer. We are so grateful he went in. Went to pick up my younger sister after school and felt something strange behind my back. As if there's something that told me to turn around, and so I did and found a guy that was carrying a thick wood and was already swinging the wood towards me and my sister. I grabbed her by the hand and carried her away from that guy that was following us while laughing like crazy. We were running around the place and while running, I decided to guide him to the police and they arrested him. Turns out he's a homeless guy who went crazy after he lost his sister before. He went crazy and would roam around town sometimes naked and scaring kids. It also turns out it wasn't his first time doing this. He actually did this to someone else too and somehow got away with it. Running towards the police is actually pretty brilliant in that situation. If it was me, I would have just run without thinking. Don't know if this is a gut feeling or I just got plain lucky. Used to live in a really sketchy part of town. I decided not to go to the gym this one evening because I was super tired that day. That same evening, around the same time that I would normally walk to the gym, there was a shooting in an intersection that was part of my usual route. 2 people died. I think to myself, had I decided to go to the gym that day, 3 people may have died. So I got really lucky, ironically, by skipping gym. I was working and had a terrible urge to go home. I am not one to ever call off or leave in the middle of a shift. I ended up saying I had a headache and my manager let me leave early. Just a few short hours later I found out my manager's ex-husband came into the store and shot her dead. I was in the woods looking for critters. And I found this big piece of plywood that would have been perfect for reptiles and amphibians to hide under. So I go to lift it up. But I have this moment of what if there's something right where I'm gonna put my hands, so I grab a stick to lift it up and underneath was a copperhead. It wasn't right where I was gonna grab, so not sure if it would have been able to bite me. But definitely a good cautionary tale. Lived in Orlando for a few years. Christina Grimmie had just been shot the night before and my girlfriend wanted to go see a show downtown. We went to the show. But I had a horrible feeling afterwards. She wanted to go to Pulse after because it was on the way home. But her car was broken down that day and I had my father take us directly home because I didn't feel comfortable staying out that night. The next morning we got texts asking if we were at Pulse because the club had been shot up. We were there the week before the massacre and had missed it by mere hours on our way home that night. Yo! I have a similar story. It was more luck and timing than anything. My now wife, then fiancé, Went for her bachelorette party one weekend. And she said she wanted to go out to the Oregon district in Dayton when she got back in town. She and her party were gone from Friday to Sunday. As fate would have it, I was drinking all weekend either with my brother or alone and playing video games. I think I got exceptionally hammered that Saturday, but figured I'd be able to rally Sunday. I'd done it before. As fate and bachelorette party would determine, my wife and I were individually more hungover than we had been in a long time. When she got home she looked and said as much. I decided to get us some big greasy burgers to see if it would help at all, accompanied with some Gatorade. We smashed it, and did feel a little better. We reconsidered if the plan was still to go out. We easily agreed that a Netflix and really chill night was the better plan. While we usually went to like the Trolley Stop and Tumbleweed first, we almost always closed the night out at Ned Pepper's. Cheap drinks and great revamped patios. We ended up kicking it hard. And pass out pretty early. Well, my wife I guess told all her friends that we were going to the Oregon that night. And they all knew we love Ned's. We get woken up to phone call after phone call to both of our phones, including from my parents asking if we're okay. We had to find out we literally and figuratively dodged bullets by being hungover pieces of speep. So sad for the people killed and hurt. I truly feel lucky to be alive. I was digging for crystals on a mountain in Idaho. The dig site looked like a war zone and was very far up a windy old logging road. Holes had been dug everywhere and fallen and chopped pine trees scattered all over the hillside. I was just getting into rock hounding and had no experience or knowledge. Long story short, I end up digging a large hole under a huge pine tree and got underneath its roots in a huge hole. There were lots of amazing big crystals I was finding in this huge hole/cave. Dirt started falling a little from ceiling. I didn't know what that meant. I decide in that exact moment I should look at this hole I'm in under this tree because I didn't feel good about it. I walk 4 feet away from the hole and instantly the 70 feet pine tree collapses into the 6-foot hole I was just in and comes crashing down to the mountainside floor. All my tools were buried under the root mass and were recovered years later. I'm just really glad I'm not a pancake. I have a severe peanut allergy. Went to a restaurant and asked if their food or sauce had peanuts. They said that there wasn't any peanuts. So we ordered some of it for the day after for a gathering. I ate some of it and immediately felt bad. I thought that maybe the heat was getting to me. So I stopped eating and told my dad I wasn't feeling too well. I didn't think anything was too bad until a couple minutes later. Something just came out of nowhere and I told him I needed a hospital. 1 car ride later, I was breaking out into rashes and was throwing up. Got the treatment I needed. And I'm still here luckily. Ironically, I experienced this the day of teaching younger kids about severe food-related allergies. Copy pasta. But it's mine. True story. In college I went to a convenience store across the street from the dorms and there were 2 ways to go. One was basically half a block through this dark crappy little alley. The other was well lit but because of fences and buildings it was 3 blocks. Keep in mind this is college so my lazy ass doesn't want to walk that far just to go on a Doritos and salsa run. I went using the shortcut and no problem. Got my Doritos original flavors. Tostitos medium strength salsa. And some Mountain Dew. It's weird how I remember this after 25 years. I browsed the 7-Eleven for a few minutes and chatted with the clerk because why not? It was a Saturday night and I wasn't doing anything. I leave the store and start to go towards the alley and stopped. It was the weirdest thing. It was like my brain was the captain of a ship and my body was the crew and the crew mutinied. I literally could not move forward. I tried again thinking what the hell? And it was like my body just went into open revolt and would not take my orders. I didn't see or hear anything unusual, but I was thinking about playing computer games while eating and drinking junk food. I just told myself, oh, all right. We'll go the long way. With some internal disgust, and I cruised away at a higher speed than usual. Not running, but faster than I typically walk, even if I am eager to get junk food into me. I made it safely back to the dorm and didn't think much of it. Next day I went to lunch in the cafeteria, and there was a local paper discarded, and I read it. In the police blotter there was a mugging in the alley that involved a knife wound and the victim being hospitalized. It happened maybe 10 minutes after I would have gone through there. Take the long way home in the light, kids. This is not a gut feeling, but more of a decision. I was getting a drink at a small gas station and was choosing between coffee and Gatorade. The Gatorade was on the right, and the coffee was on the left. I decided on the coffee. Right before I went to pay for it, a car drove through the wall, knocking over 2 shelves, including the Gatorade and thousands of dollars of alcohol. To this day, I always look at where that hole in the wall was. Long story short, I followed a random dude off the street when I was 8 and ended up choosing the only guy in the city who would actually lead me home. I could tell a man merging on the highway wasn't looking and thought it was a clear late-night road. I moved in time to slightly graze his car while going 110 km/h. Holy crap. In my city, the mayor's government reduced the max speeds on the highways all the way from 90 km/h to 70 km/h. Reduced fatal accidents by a whopping 99%. SRSLY. It took 1 year to reach the numbers of what used to happen in 2 days. My gut felt weird, so I went to my doctor and ended up getting an ultrasound to check for possible gallstones. They found unrelated cancer instead. Gut feeling is probably why I'm alive right now.